The very first video I posted was on a cyberdeck I'd made. Now the original idea was to just make a Raspberry Pi based tablet that could live in a workshop and I wouldn't really care if it got all dusty and dirty. And then it sort of snowballed into this whole idea of trying to make the ultimate maker tablet computer. And so what I came up with had an array of sensors along the top for monitoring the environment, a pair of removable control bars with a bunch of buttons and switches for, whatever you wanted really, and then a built-in Arduino along with some pins and space allocated on the inside for 2 transceivers. So the idea was that between the control bars and the transceivers, you could even manipulate and control RC projects you were working on. Now on the back, there was also a Charlieplex matrix that was just sort of a fun version of the, maker creative version of the glowing Apple logo. And there was a retractable spring-loaded keyboard that I was playing around with. Now the end result was fully functional, but it wasn't very usable. I was using a Raspberry Pi 3B that was just something I had on hand, and it really wasn't very powerful. And so, you had this tablet with all these nice bells and whistles, but it didn't really matter because those main computery things that we use the computer for, like surfing the internet, wasn't really something you could do. And so as an end result, the tablet more or less just spent its entire life sitting on the edge of my desk collecting dust until I scrapped it for parts. That was sort of the end of everything until I decided to do it again and have another attempt at this. Now, after the whole fiasco of the first one, I was just gonna go and make the most plain, bare bones tablet possible. Just a Raspberry Pi, a touchscreen, and a battery, and basically nothing else. And then I posted the video on the first one, and it kind of reminded me that it's supposed to be more than that. And so I delicately added a couple of extras back in. Okay, so I printed up this tester piece and it's definitely got some issues. You can see I had to kind of chip away the material up here in order to get the screen to slide in, but I stuck the Pi in and it fits so nicely. So I just slid all this together for the first time, just printed up these, tester shell pieces recently, and this is the first time this screen has been back in a case since I took it out of the old tablet. I mean, it's, obviously rough around the edges, but it's starting to take shape. Oh, starting to feel it. This is the first time I'm turning everything on together, so hopefully I'm not about to see a bunch of magic smoke. Got a pie light, 2 pie lights. Lights here. Lights here. Okay, we have power to the Arduino. Hey, hey. Now it's time to focus on the keyboard design. So this is the old retractable keyboard. And so behind this flap in the stand, there's the keyboard. You can pull it out and it's connected to 3 retractable spring-loaded ID badge thingies. And so you can set it all up and then, do whatever work. And then all you have to do is hopefully lift it up, it retracts back in, and you're good to go. There are some issues with it. It doesn't have enough force in the retractable spring-loaded ID badge things to fully lift it back up. So you can see I have to give it a little bit of an oomph to get it to retract in. And then even then it doesn't go all the way back in because I think there's some sort of resistance up here at the top bit. And so you can have to force it in the last little bit of the way to get it all the way back in. And so a lot of that is coming from the fact that these 3 things are here. And first off, there are these big, ugly, gluey bumps that are just like adding thickness to everything, and it's not great. And then of course the bumps on the inside as well, so I think that's adding to some of the resistance that the keyboard is facing when it's trying to go back up. And then of course the lines for these are coming out this way, and then they're getting wrapped around a wire here and then going back to the keyboard, so they're having to do like a full 180 to get back to the keyboard. And so I think all of this just really isn't a great way to have this designed, so I've got a new design and we'll see how that goes. One other thing is the lines for these retractable things are just kind of glued to the back of the keyboard here, and then there's like some tape on top, and I don't really like that either, so I have a new design for that as well. This is the new design. So the tablet is down here, and then the whole keyboard bit will be up here and kind of on the top. Instead of having the retractable badge parts on this back area here like they were before, now they're going to be in these holes kind of up at the top of the tablet. And so that'll mean that there won't be any bumps on either side of this back area. And it'll also mean that the lines coming off of those badge pieces won't have to do a whole 180 to attach to the keyboard. They'll just have to be angled a little bit. I printed up a test version. The retractable badge piece will go in here, and one thing I haven't said is that there's 2 on this side and this is half of it, so there's going to be another 2 on the other side, so I'll have 4 of these retractable badge things instead of 3 like the old one, for hopefully a little bit more power and force. And then after that goes in, there's this plug that goes in afterwards, and this thing fits so nicely. I mean, just look at that. Here's the end result. It's got a Raspberry Pi 4B, which is a step up from the old tablet. In order to install the Pi on the old tablet, I had to remove the Ethernet and USB ports, which badly damaged the Pi in the process. I also had to do a bunch of gnarly soldering to most of the GPIO pins. This time, all the ports are intact and there was just a little bit of easy soldering on a couple of pins. The battery and power circuitry has also improved. The old battery solution was pretty sketchy and among many flaws ran rather hot. For most of the life of the old tablet, I was pretty worried that the batteries were going to start smoking or something. I'm a lot less stressed about this system. I was also, to my surprise, able to install the speakers that I'd originally gotten for the first tablet. On that one, I ran out of space and had to use this single small speaker instead. There's a number of buttons and ports on the sides. All the buttons for the display board are accessible. There's also a USB-C charging port and a slide switch to control the main power on the battery board. And finally at the top there's some power pins and a Stemma QT quick I2C connector for the breadboard and the sensors up top. On the other side, there's the Raspberry Pi and this button I couldn't resist adding since I've had it forever and had never had the right project for it. Pressing it auto shuts down the Pi. Now on the front, the removable control bars are gone. The Pimeroni LED strip is still there, just this time built into the tablet itself. There's also a panel of buttons, switches, and LEDs. This is all connected to an Adafruit KB2040, which seems like a fitting companion for the Raspberry Pi. This whole panel is removable, and I deliberately installed it after I'd installed everything else to make sure that I could actually install it and remove it in the future. It's not something you'd change frequently, but it is possible to switch it out with a differently configured panel. The keyboard stand is separate from the tablet and can be fairly easily installed by sliding it into these notches at the top of the tablet. Then 2 bolts go through the back to secure it even further. Finally, this cable plugs into the Stemma QT port. There's another port on the inside that can also be used, but it's tedious to install the stand that way, so I've decided to just plug it into the outside port. This cable is for the 16x9 CharlieFlex matrix on the back that now has a proper cover. The keyboard does retract. It's a lot smoother than the old version. No more sticky resistance feel in trying to push it in that final bit. Now it's just smooth PLA sliding on PLA. It still does require an extra jolt or two to get it to fully slide in, so there's some room for improvement. Finally, instead of permanently glued in sensors on the top, there are these removable modular parts to mount sensors and or breadboards to. They also work with just the tablet. And that's everything. Now I'm not too sure how much I'll actually be using this. I feel like it might not be that much, but I'm still happy that I made a second one of these. And I love how cleanly and nicely it came out. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.